Hey guys, so let's me just adjust that just a smidge for you. So I thought I'd mix it up a bit and make a video where I'm actually dressed in normal work clothes and where I actually am in an environment that is less noisy. The boiling water in the background, you're just gonna have to live with that if you can hear it, cause I'm making dinner basically. But let's get into it. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about consistency in the code base. And the thing is, it was actually something that struck me just as I was going from leaving work today. So I'm working on implementing basically an administrative tool or panel for for the support department in my company. And we are working on, I'm not going to give away the feature obviously because it's still a work in progress, but it's a very exciting piece of software that I'm working on right now. And one of the things that we're doing now is basically adding a completely new page to this administrative tool where a lot of complexity, a lot of stuff is going to go into that page, a lot of work is going into this page. And so the thing is that when I was starting working on this, to give you a bit of context, just a few weeks ago, my colleagues basically were asking me about, my experiences working as a professional, front-end developer, or like a JavaScript-oriented developer, and how I could transition a lot of the ugliness had been the ugly code that had been the case at my previous companies into something a little bit nicer. And I'm not saying that I know all the things, but I have a bit of experience migrating things into a nicer structure. And basically I told them that the message I gave them was that the way that I'd like to structure my front-end, JavaScript-oriented project, is to basically take the ideas that you see in the Node package module system and apply those to my own code base. So let's say that you're creating a React application and you're creating React components. If you've watched any of my other videos on this topic, you will know that basically I'm saying that you should write each React component as if it was its own Node module, like its own NPM package basically. And so my colleagues got very excited about this, and some of them asked me about some coaching and stuff like that. So I did some coaching because I absolutely love teaching, and of course learning. The only thing I love more than teaching is learning. So that's a very nice cycle to have. But anywho, basically I was working on this massive complicated feature. And so we had decided that we were going to move away from the way that they had been writing code in the past, where they basically separated all their different, they basically did the MVC thing, right? You have your container directory, you have your components directory, your reducers or ducks or whatever you want to call it for we're using Redux. And so all of that was spread out. But in my pattern of writing, or the way that I like to write things, I put them in a centralized position. Now this is not, of course, not my idea. This has been around for a while. But the way that I like to think about it is like a library-oriented approach to structuring your components. And the thing is that one of my colleagues, who is a little bit of a, well, he's not a code diva, but he has an obsession with what he calls consistency. In other words, he wants everything to be written in a certain way. Like he wants things to follow this way of working and this way of being written. Everything should be consistent. Everything should look like. I basically believe that he may have watched one or too many tech talks about, you've probably heard it if you've been doing coding, the code should look as if there's just one person writing the whole thing. And I can tell you from experience that this is not the case. I have never ever worked on a project where this is true. I have worked on projects where you have linters and you have coding practices and you try your best to adhere to them, but I've never ever seen anybody being able to convince me that, hey, this massive project, it looks like a single person wrote it. There's no inconsistencies whatsoever. To me, the only sane way of approaching consistency is that, maybe small, as I said, linting practices where the linter can actually help you. But when it comes to actually structuring your code, it's actually funny because I told him this thing, like I was telling him that you do realize that, because he was one of the people who was most excited about this idea I was pitching about library-oriented development. And I said, you do realize that this is going to cause a fracture in the code base, right? You know that it's going to actually put you in a situation where you now have my way of writing code, like these directories in the code in places where originally it's actually a lot, there's like everything, you know, this is going to be a minority, like as you're shifting things over, because frankly, when it comes to consistency, if you ever wanted to change your practices, you couldn't, like in theory you can't do that, because if you have to be consistent, then you can never try anything new or improve your coding patterns, because then all of a sudden you have to rewrite your whole project to be consistent with the new way of writing. And so I told them that what the gain here is that you are transitioning into something that, in my opinion, is very modular, very easy to maintain, and scales extremely well over time. And you are doing that at the cost of a little bit of inconsistency. And considering the benefits of this approach of working, considering that this consistent way of working they've had so far hasn't been working out very well for them, I think that's a nice buy. And that's actually, I argue, the way you should approach any problem. Like if you are a contributor to a project, if there are people, like if you need to follow certain rules, you should absolutely do that. But you should always push for the idea of creating isolated components or isolated libraries, because the thing is that is consistent. I make the argument that, you know, all the packages that you depend on in Node, you have, like, every project is different. Every npm package is structured differently, but the dependencies, the way that you require things into your own project, that is, oh, sorry about that. I was just when I was gonna make my nice, like, hammer finish, that is consistent. Sorry about the spin, guys. Hopefully this video provided some value to you. So basically what I'm saying to you is consistency is great, but what's even better is isolation and modularity.